Our guest speaker this morning is Maureen Muldoon. She is an actress, playwright, author, a spiritual Pied Piper, and the most engaging thing that I can say about her is that she drove all the way from Chicago this morning. So she's been on the road for well over 4 hours and deserves, and we are delighted to give her a warm welcome. Maureen, come on up.
Yeah, I was on the road this morning. And that's a funny story that I'll share with you, but I just wanted to begin by saying thank you so much for inviting me here. Your community is audacious, and I just feel so well fed by the music, from feeling groovy to the meditations and the amazing reading that you supplied. Like, we can all go home, really. I don't have too much more to add. But it's so nice to be in this community, and it reflects and mirrors a community that I run in Hinsdale, outside of Chicago, called Speakeasy, where we all speak easily. And I love that you guys get up and do your announcements, and it feels like you're all holding a part of the parachute. You know what I mean by that? When you're at kids' parties and they do the parachute thing. I used to do kids' parties, so sometimes my references aren't applicable to everyone, but yeah, we're all holding a part of the parachute so that we can experience the great joy. So great to be here. My name is Maureen Muldoon, and I am here to help raise the consciousness around communication and conversations on this planet. And I do that by being 100% impeccable for my words, so that I can share the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and to help other people find their voice and their stories, and help them tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God, right? And you know, I do need a lot of help from God, and so it's nice to know that God is so helpful. I'm not always helpful to God. Sometimes I'm as helpful to God as a bike is to a fish, you know? And so I sometimes have to really take the direction of, get out of the way, Maureen. You know, God continues to tell me, like, get out of the way, you know? I got this. So I read this book recently. Actually, there I am lying. I didn't read the book. I read the title. I read the title. Let's be impeccable, Maureen. I read the title of this book by Annie Lamont called Help, Thanks, Wow. And these were some prayers that she gave, suggestions that we might use these prayers. Help, thanks, wow. And I'm dyslexic, so I kind of had to lean into the title. I was like, does that say wow or now? And it was wow. And from then on, I began to get intrigued with the prayer of wow. And I've had many opportunities to pray that prayer. Maybe you have too. So much of the conversation prior to this talk has been leading us to the idea of like living on the edge and moving into your wow. In fact, I do this show called Transparent Love, because one of my kids is transgender. And I talk about the butterfly, you know, the caterpillar turning into the butterfly, and the gook that you get into when you're just like, I know it's not a caterpillar and it's not yet a butterfly. Where are we, right? And in that place of gook, there's this amazing thing that happens to the butterfly. It's not all gook. There's actually something else in that gook. Do you know what it is? And I know this because my kid was, you know, so invested in finding out about butterflies because of his journey. It's a thing called the imaginal disc. Isn't that interesting? The imaginal disc. And when I asked my son, what does this imaginal disc do? He said, I think it's saying to the caterpillar, imagine flight. Imagine flight. And when we get to the edge, you know, that's what we're imagining, either falling or flight. And I invite you to absolutely imagine you're a butterfly, because the alternative is not as fun. So on my way to this moment, I had this interesting experience about living in the now. You know, God always lets me live my sermons like in the visceral, in the cellular. And what happened this morning was I was thinking, oh yeah, I have tons of time to get to Ann Arbor. You know, I had to be at this event last night in Chicago. And I had planned out to be here an hour early so I could have my tea and meditation and I could look polished and professional. But God was like, not today. You're going to look human. And so I pack everything up and I get in the car and I put in the GPS. And I had forgotten that you guys are an hour before me. I thought I was going to get here at 9:30, and it looked like I was going to get here at 10:30. And I was like, oh my, wow. And so I said, okay, well, this is God's plan. I get to just do the next right thing, which is drive. And I called my friend Joni, and I said, Joni, looks like I'm going to get there at 10:30. And she said, well, I got some good, because I thought the sermon started at 10:30. She said, I got some good news. It starts at 10:45. You would have thought I won the lottery. I was like, whoa, oh my God, it's awesome. So small things can bring such great joy, right? So... and I've had some really great teachers, and when it comes to joy, when we live the prayer of wow, we're literally living in the joy. We're annihilating fear, and we're like, it looks like I'm falling, but man, I'm flying. I don't care what you call it, I'm flying. And so I had some teachers who really helped me to see that, and one of them was my friend Mary Beth. I don't know if any of you have had a friend like Mary Beth, but she was one of those people who seemed to have gone through every single classroom that there actually was. Like she had a divorce, and she had breast cancer, and she had her house burned down. Yeah, and I remember when she had breast cancer, she called me and she was like, Maureen, I have breast cancer. And I immediately thought, because I, as a child, had front row seats to the classroom of breast cancer with my mom. And I watched my mom go through horrific pain and annihilation. It just sounded horrible and terrible. It was hideous to witness. And so before I could say to her, this is terrible, she said, and this is going to be the best thing that ever happened to me. And I was like, what the wow? And she was like, yeah, it's going to be the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm just going to milk this thing for all it's worth. I was like, this doesn't make any sense. And I was like, okay, Mary Beth. And I hung up the phone. I looked at my husband. I'm like, Mary Beth, not only does she have breast cancer, but she's gone mad. Like, she's lost her mind. Like, she's definitely in shock. And my husband was like, okay. So the next time I call Mary Beth, and she's like, oh my gosh, you're not going to believe what happened. This is such great news. I'm going to get a whole new rack. And I was like, what? And I'm like, that's like a silver lining thing, man. Like, you got to go through breast cancer for this. And I wanted to tell her, like, it's not easy, and it's da-da-da-da-da. And she was like, this is going to be great. It's going to be so awesome. And I was like, okay, Mary Beth. And I hung up the phone. I'm like, insane. Like, she's really losing it out there. And I'm really nervous for her because she's really not taking this seriously. And this is a serious classroom. So the next time she calls me, and she's laughing, and she's pulled over by a cop, and she's like, you won't believe what just happened. I got out of a speeding ticket. And I said, what happened? She goes, well, I was, speeding to my appointment with my doctor, and the cop pulled me over, and I told him I had breast cancer, and he didn't believe me. He was like, you're too jolly to have breast cancer. And so I got my doctor on the phone, and my doctor spoke to the cop, and I was like, okay, Mary Beth, I'm coming out to see you. I told my husband she needed an intervention, so I made a ticket to go out to see Mary Beth. And I got out to her house, and she lives in this beautiful home in California. She's a photographer, and she has these great, black and white pictures all over her walls of all of her life experiences. And on one of her walls, there was this piece of artwork that was hideous. Like, it was like, what is that? And I tried to ignore it as she continued to school me on the awesomeness of her life. And I kept looking up this picture, and finally I said to her, what's up with that? And she said, oh, that's my most prized possession. And I said, really? And she said, yeah, I got it at the Salvation Army for $5. And I said, really? And she goes, yeah, you see, remember when my house burnt down? And I said, yeah, I remember. Santa Ana winds came in and took out your whole neighborhood. She said, yes. She said, at the time, I remember I was living with Big Al. I said, yeah, I remember Big Al. He was really intimidating. He was a bouncer at one of the clubs in California. And he was kind of intimidating and scary. And she said, well, I wasn't home at the time of the fires, and they gave us some time to go in and get some of our valuables out of the fires. And so I called Big Al, and I said, go in, and, when you're getting your stuff, like, get my stuff too, my pictures, And so she met up with Big Al after she got home, and he opened up his trunk, and he took out this picture from the Salvation Army. And she said, did you get all of my cameras, my $1,000 of cameras? And he said, no, I got you this picture. And she said, did you get the footage for the weddings that I had just taken for all of those brides? And he said, no, I got you this picture. And she said she was like starting to rage, and then she saw that Big Al was trembling. And he was starting to cry. And she had this brief moment where she had a moment of sanity, and she was like, oh my gosh, Big Al, this is my most prized possession. This is exactly what I would have wanted you to get. And she just flipped that whole thing. And she told me that she hangs this picture in her house so that she can remember what's really valuable. You know, not the things, but actually the peace that lives between us. And the peace that lives between us is only going to be available if I actually play my part in peace. If you study A Course in Miracles, the lesson today is I am willing to play my part in God's plan for salvation. Any Course in Miracles students here? Awesome, yeah. So am I willing to play my part in God's plan for salvation? You can substitute the word salvation for peace. Am I willing to play my part in God's plan for peace? Am I willing to look at this disaster, this destruction, this dis-ease and say, wow, this is going to be awesome? That's really the call. You know, that's really the call for love. That's really the annihilation of fear. So Mary Beth has been a great teacher for me, and also spiders have been a great teacher for me. Yeah, I have a fear of spiders. I'm not alone. There's actually a word for people, you know, for the fear. Anybody know that word for spear? Oh my God! Yeah, right? Well, I had a healing over that, so this one might help you. But my only fear is no longer spiders, but my fear of arachnophobia is to be in a spelling bee where I'm being asked to spell the word arachnophobia. Because as I mentioned, I'm dyslexic, and I would just be, use that in a sentence, please. So this fear of arachnophobia, you know, we get to look at these little teeny fears and these big fears, and we get to look to nature, and I'm a poet and a writer, so I look into deeper things that are underneath the symbols, and I ask the Holy Spirit, like, what is this thing with spiders? Like, why do people kill them, and why are they so scary? And it says to me, like, this is just a little bug, and yet it creates magnificent artwork, doesn't it? And it does it so easily. Maybe you're afraid of the ease which the spider works. In fact, she just goes wherever she wants to go. And she says, I want to live there. And she begins to weave this artistry. And she doesn't, take a symposium on how to weave a web, She doesn't try and figure out, like, what workshops can get her to, catch flies. She just weaves her web, her creativity. All of us are exactly like that. We have that internal creativity within us, and we can draw into that and allow that to express through us. So she weaves this beautiful web. And then instead of, trying to send out, mailings or have this huge launch around her opening of her art, she does what none of us really want to do, is she crosses right into the center of her art. She lives right in the middle of her art. And she says, I'm not afraid to be visible and vulnerable. This is me. This is who I am. And I just think that's such a great classroom for me, because sometimes I'm afraid to be visible and vulnerable. And then in the story of the spider, then a fly shows up. And it's like, oh, wow, the fly just flies into the artwork, and then he gets stuck there. And the spider's like, what? Wait, what happened? Like, I just created this beautiful thing, and now you showed up, and you're stuck. And the fly's like, yeah, I'm stuck. I'm totally stuck. I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. But, hey, I love what you did here. This is beautiful. You're a real artist. I always wanted to be an artist. And the spider has no time for this. She's like, come on. Like, I spent a lot of time on this. He's like, well, there's nothing we can do now, right? I'm stuck here. So, So he says, listen, I'll never be an artist in this lifetime, but you could help me out and I could help you out. You could take me and you could give me the burial of an artist and wrap me in your art. And then I will exchange something for you. I will give you my blood, and you can take me with you into all of the next webs that you make. And the spider says, okay. And this is the way we get to look at transactions that seem like horrific deaths and sacrifices as a possibility for a peaceful exchange. Is there a possibility for peaceful exchanges in our lives? To see things differently? Like, to really be willing to see things differently, to tell new stories. That's what we're going to be talking about today at my workshop, is how to tell new stories. And it's not just a workshop on writing and creativity. It's actually a workshop on expanding your consciousness. Looking at your blocks. Experimentals that will help you to move past these blind spots and these blocks that we create in order not to live fully visible and valued in our own life. So I learned many of these things the hard way. As I mentioned, I was an actress in New York City, in New York and California, and I've had some great classrooms. So I hope that you come out to the workshop after the talk today. I wanted to share that if you can't make it, I just tripped because my shoe's broken. Like, that's how classy I am this morning. I put my shoes on. I'm like, what the heck? That must have happened last night at the ball. Because I did wear these shoes last night. So if you can't come to the workshop, I wanted to invite you to take a book home with you. Giant Love Song is about an experience I had with when my mom passed away from cancer, and how my father told me a story that saved my life. And that's where I got to see the powerful medicine in storytelling and a well-placed story. And this, I won't hold it upside down, but this book is about when my husband left me for Miss Universe. Yeah, I know. It was a really fun gig. And it's called Spiritual Vixen's Guide to an Unapologetic Life. And in each chapter, there is a little tool or technique that you can use to walk your way out of your own hell. So I invite you to take one of those home with you. It'd be like, you're having an exchange with the spider and with the fly. That's how you can help me continue my ministry, is by supporting it. So I really and truly appreciate that, and I don't mind inviting you to participate in it. I wanted to end with one final story about my fantastic teacher, Mary Beth. So Mary Beth did get her rack, and she was very, very excited about it. And so she had a party to celebrate this new rack. And of course, it was a beach party so that everybody could see fully what she had earned. So I went down to the beach with her and all of these other people, and you could not find a jollier tribe. Like, everybody was so happy. I was like, what the hell is going on here? And they were all toasting and celebrating Mary Beth's new rack. And there was one guy who was extremely, absurdly, almost, unimaginably happy. And he was laying down by the water's edge, and he was a very large man, and he was about 70, and he was letting the water suck him out and then spit him out, and then suck him in and then spit him out. And he looked like he was having a stroke or something, but he was very happy and laughing, and he looked sort of like a seal, just flailing and flying around. And I just couldn't stop watching him. And I finally asked Mary Beth, what's up with that guy? And she said, oh, that's my dad. And I said, what's your dad doing? And she said, he's playing seaweed. And I said, what is this thing called seaweed? She says, oh, you just go with the flow. And I was like, so disturbed by this that I kept watching and watching and watching and watching until finally I heard myself say, I want to be seaweed. And I laid down on the beach, on the water, on the edge of the water, and I just let the ocean have me. And it sucked me in and spit me out, and sucked me in and spit me out, and I was getting rashed, and I was getting sand and crevices I didn't know I had, and I was all kinds of thrilled. I met up with that child within me that was inviting me to live in the wow. And so this is a baptism that happened to me, but these kinds of opportunities and invitations are available to all of us. Not just the beautiful, wonderful, delightful invitations, the opportunities to dance, the opportunities to sing that we stand back and we act like wallflowers and we say, maybe tomorrow, maybe tomorrow, maybe tomorrow. There is no tomorrow. Today's the day. Today's the day. And if we don't dance today, maybe, who knows what will happen. So we don't want to take that risk anymore. We don't want to hide our gold, our gems, our brilliance. And if the other things should invite you forward, if we have other invitations like cancer or death, or your husband leaves you for Miss Freaking Universe, I'm going to invite you to take a breath, to really take a breath and come to the edge. And instead of imagining that your life is falling apart, imagine that you're just getting ready to fly. And open your mind, and open your heart, and open your arms. And activate that joyful expectancy. And I promise, if you move into applying a little bit of accepting the great wow, you will experience miracles beyond your wildest dreams. And that's the truth and the whole truth. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for letting me share.